Hello, my name is Chuck Wolf. Over the years, I've worked in many different roles, including leading my own leadership consulting company since 1994. I've worked for and with some of the best companies and universities in the world, and have had the opportunity to work with government officials, military organizations, and public and private schools. I'm a leading expert and pioneer in emotional intelligence. Since 2009, I've been a volunteer hosting a radio show I created called The Emotion Roadmap: Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. I really enjoy making a difference in people's lives. The show is on award-winning community radio station, WPKN in Bridgeport, Connecticut. In recent years, Simsbury Community Television has been sharing my shows on their station and on YouTube. My sincere hope is that everyone who watches regularly will learn how to use the Emotion Roadmap in their own lives by listening to people who call in to get help with challenges at work, home, and in communities. To learn more, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. If you have a comment or question, email me at cjwolf@cjwolf.com. Thank you and enjoy the show. And you're listening to WPKN, 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio. And we just want to make sure that the program is on the way it's supposed to be, and hopefully people can hear this. Anyway, so today is a day that is National Autism Day, and it's something that for those of you that have family members, friends, people that are in your life somehow that have are on this what they call the spectrum or have some form of autism, it's just a day to be increasingly empathetic to what they experience. It's a challenge to go through life with some difficulties in communications and understanding emotional communications. How we communicate emotionally isn't always as clear to someone with autism as it is to others. And it's something just to be aware of and to be thankful for all that you have, but also if you happen to be involved with somebody with on the spectrum with some kind of neuro-linguistic issues, then you want to be supportive and you want to let them know that you understand that they're dealing with some challenging situations, and where you can, you want to be helpful to them. I just wanted to say something about that. I have friends and family members who are on that scale, and anything that I've ever done that it can be helpful to you, and if you like it, something I've done, and let me know and I'll repeat it. And if there's more that I can do, I want to do it for you. So that's just a way of opening up. I'm Chuck Wolf. You're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And the show is all about helping people communicate with me about situations where you might be facing something where you are in a position where you're uncertain of how to proceed about what's going on in your life. What's going on in your life that might be problematic, that might be concerning, that might be incredibly important, and yet you don't know how to quite proceed. You're not certain about what you need to do to go forward. So one of the things that happens sometimes when I'm on the air is I have a radio show that basically I am very proud to have been doing for the last 16 years. And it's helpful to other people when someone calls in, because if you happen to be a person who's out there who has an issue that you're wondering what to do next, you're afraid maybe of saying something to someone which may escalate a situation instead of improvement, or you've got a decision to make that is really unclear to you, what's the best decision to choose? What's the best move to make? It might have a lot to do with your circumstances at work. I know there's a lot of layoffs taking place these days, and one of the things that always does is to scare people quite a bit when layoffs are happening all around you in your own company perhaps, and you're worried about what to do. And you're also worried about the people who are being laid off, and you're hoping that you're not going to be one of them. At least that's a fairly typical reaction. And one of the things that I like to encourage people to think about is, in times of stressful circumstances, it's useful to consider, what are your options if by chance you are someone who gets laid off? What might you do? And for a lot of people, that's a very fearful thought process. It's scary to think about how you might behave in a circumstance where you unexpectedly are laid off. So I think one of the things I've said to clients over the years when I work with people as a coach, I've often encouraged people to think about, well, actually, you want to be prepared for all kinds of circumstances and maybe not be highly focused on what to do should your company lay people off if that's not happening. But if it is ongoing and you think it might be happening in your company, or it clearly is and has been happening in your company, what might you do next? I know that's a scary thought for some, or for lots of people, really, and yet it's really useful to be prepared. The show, The Emotion Roadmap, suggests that sometimes the emotions we feel aren't particularly helpful. For instance, if you're feeling scared about being laid off and you're somewhat fearful, you don't want to be to the state of panic where you're just frozen in fear. Instead, you want the fear to be a useful mechanism for driving action. So what would make you less fearful? Well, one of the things I believe is true is that when you feel like the control is totally outside of what you are able to influence, and it's happening above you at levels perhaps way above you in an organization, you sometimes then want to think about, how do I take control back? How do I get back in control over what's happening in my life? And one of the things I suggest is that people consider, what choices do you have? If you were to transfer or seek out employment in another place, another town, another state, another type of career perhaps, or even in your same field but with another company that seems more successful perhaps than the one you're with, how would you go about doing that? What steps would you need to take? And rather than wait until the inevitable time when all of a sudden, oh my God, I heard today that I don't have a job anymore, prepare as if you may hear that soon. And always be prepared in the sense that you are confident in your ability to handle what comes. It gives such tremendous inner peace to all of us to know that we will be capable no matter what comes. And so maybe it's time to learn a skill set that people are very dependent on. A trade, electrician, plumbers are in demand, carpenters are in demand. But also, the idea of people who are computer savvy, particularly around issues of cybersecurity or artificial intelligence. What about stepping into a new field if you have the kind of competency and ability to operate in that field? To learn what you can so that you're prepared for the new age that's coming, if you will, the transformation to at some point down the road a ways, quantum physics, artificial intelligence, robot technology. So much is changing in our landscape. And are we doing what we can to be prepared? Are we just hoping to ride off into the sunset with the last few years of our career? Or are we actually thinking about, what else do I want to learn? What else can help me? So I wanted to talk about that because I do know of a number of companies. And of course, I know about a lot of people in the government that are being laid off these days as well. And by the way, just to say just one little thing about the government layoffs. I mean, I know the government is bloated. I know that we've been talking about waste and fraud, et cetera. And we've been talking about it for years. Every president has come along and said something about it. This president's doing something about it. And not always in ways that people are happy with, obviously. But at the same time, this is something that's happening in our world. And so how do you prepare for it? That's what I want to talk about, in the sense that I want people, whether you're in the government or in industry, to be prepared. On the one hand, we know there's lots of layoffs. On the other, I just saw the jobs report this morning, and we had 155,000 new jobs added, much higher than was expected. So there are lots of jobs out there. I've heard the governor in our state, where we operate from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I've heard the governor in our state say that there's lots of high-paying jobs out there. People aren't applying for them. So consider what's out there. Consider the skills that you have. Consider the skills that you need for one of those high-paying jobs, if that's something you want to think about and do. So I encourage you to think, as we deal with what's happening in our world, about being prepared for all circumstances, really, but just trying to understand what might happen if you're in a place that you like and you're happy to be there and you don't want to leave, but all of a sudden things change and it's necessary that you leave. And try and get ahead of the curve. If you see it coming, then don't necessarily wait if you have other opportunities that are good ones. So I don't want to encourage people to scare people any more than you already are, but I do think it's so important to feel like you have control over what happens to your life. What happens to you? What happens to you in terms of your circumstances if you work for somebody else? So the show is about taking the wheel and controlling how you feel. And so in a time, in an environment where there's a lot of job cuts happening, it's useful to consider, is my resume up to date? Have I really thought about what else I might like to do? Is there something I'd love to learn that I want to make sure I take some time out of my day as best I can, or at least out of my week, a number of hours a week where I'm learning something that I know is going to be useful in the upcoming changes in our economy? So I think that's important to consider. Well, okay. I also want to talk to you about what the show is. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in. I know that the last few times my show's been on the air, I'm on the first and second Wednesdays of the month. I'm Chuck Wolf, and the show's The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. We operate out of Bridgeport, Connecticut on WPKN 89.5 FM. And I just want to say to all of you who are listening, who are regular listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the last couple of weeks' shows that I did last month. There were shows where I actually, I had some panel discussions that I've run over the years, and a couple of them I thought were really worthy to put on the radio and edit it a bit. And one of the ones last week was about a Harvard Business alumni panel that I was asked to help to lead. And I created a panel of 4 different guests. One of the guests was on the air. Actually, he happened to be a Yale alumni, Gary Chernus, that I chose to have as the speaker, talking about what are the benefits of emotional intelligence. Academically speaking, Gary has been the director of the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence in Organizations for a number of years, and Gary is one of the smartest people I know about all that's happening in the field. And he also is a really good person to ask about, why is emotional intelligence still here? It showed up in the 1990s. So many things come and go, like fads. They're here for a while. People think that they're very exciting, and all of a sudden, several years out, nobody's talking about them anymore. Well, instead of disappearing, emotional intelligence is growing and growing and growing. So I talked about why I think it's so important to be smart about emotional intelligence, to learn all that you can about it, to get past the definition of it just simply means to be nice and more empathetic to others, which of course it does mean, but it also means helping to understand that when fear hits, what do you do with it? When you need to create some kind of other feeling, unpleasant feeling for somebody who's not performing up to par, how do you do that? If you want to make something tough for somebody who's being very competitive with you in a negotiation, how do you manage your emotions throughout a process where you have to create some unpleasant emotions? Emotional intelligence means simply being smart about how emotions are used, how you use emotions, how others are using emotions, either collaboratively or competitively with you, and how to respond appropriately. So there's a tremendous amount that we can learn and be smarter about how we deal interactively with people, with our own emotions, and with others. And that show is about helping everybody who listens to learn how to do that. And so when people call in about circumstances in their lives where they feel challenged and uncertain, how to deal with a particular problem that they're facing, maybe an opportunity. Maybe somebody's offered you a job in another company or with the same company, but in a different place. And you have to move your family away from your existing family, your existing extended family. And you're worried about, what does that mean? Maybe your parents are aging and you're worried about the fact that if you did move away, you wonder if you're going to see your parents again. All kinds of things. That's an opportunity, not even a problem, but becomes a problem when you're uncertain about how to proceed with it. And I like to think that this emotion roadmap I've created is like an emotion-based planning process, that by looking at the emotions in play, you're able to make more thoughtful, more and sometimes easier and sometimes wonderful decisions that seem unavailable to you when you're just thinking with your analytic intelligence, which is how we operate most of the time. We try to problem solve using our cognitive abilities, our analytic intelligence, our problem-solving skills. But when emotions are involved, oftentimes smart people get stuck. because we don't always know how to deal with the emotions. And that's what this show is about, is to teach you how to deal with emotions. There can be emotional circumstances in your workplace that have nothing to do with losing your job, but everything to do with getting your job done effectively in a quality way, in a timely basis. And it has to do with problems with peers that aren't getting work to you that's due to you, and you don't have control over them. They're outside of your area of responsibility and accountability, but you depend on them for work to get onto your desk so that you can move it forward to get to a complete service or product, whatever your company provides. So as you think about the situations where you're experiencing difficulties or challenges that are unclear how to move forward at work or at home you may have problems with parents that are aging and you need to take away the car keys. Parents who are living alone, a spouse has passed away, and they seem to be unkempt. They seem to be not taking care of themselves, and you're wondering how to help them through that. It could have to do with your own immediate family. You may be raising children, or you may have difficulty with a partner, or you may have a struggle with what's the right way to allow screen time with your kids, as an example of things that people are grappling with these days. Lots of questions about relationships are the focus for this show. So I've talked for a little while. I do want to allow you to call in. So let me say that the number to call, if you're interested in speaking with me, and if you call me, again, I'm Chuck Wolf, and if you call me, I have expertise that I will try to bring to bear on your circumstance while I'm informing everybody that's listening what we're doing. So by you going public, by you being willing to avail yourself of this opportunity to get some professional expertise and some potential help for what you have to decide or get done, or how you deal with a challenging circumstance that you have. All of that is to say that you are allowing other people to hear me help you, and everybody grows if they learn how to use this process, which simply involves someone telling me a story, you calling in and telling me a quick story about what's going on, me summarizing that to make sure you feel heard, and also that I understand what you're dealing with. Then asking you, okay, so it sounds like obviously you're involved, but is there anybody else that's key to your situation? Sometimes it's just an internal struggle. It's just you, and you have to decide something internal that's challenging, and you don't need to worry about anybody else. But a lot of the times it's having to do with someone in the workplace, someone at home, someone in the community, and maybe it's a group of people that are involved. So it isn't just you. And I ask you, who's key? So like, what are you feeling? And whoever is key, what is he or she or they feeling? That's where it starts. The emotional number starts with, where are you emotionally? And then I ask, if the emotions aren't helpful, and often if you're calling, the emotions are always informative, but not always particularly helpful. Then I ask, okay, so what do you think, if you could magically change how you're feeling and how you want these other people to feel that are key? What feelings would you want for you to have, and would you want for them to have? What would they be? So your current state is what you are feeling. Your future state is ideally what you want to feel. And we talk about why you want to feel certain ways. And what's fascinating about the science of emotional intelligence is that we have learned over time that certain emotions aren't helpful for particular tasks. Sometimes there are really ideal emotions that you would like to feel based on what you're trying to get done with yourself, sometimes internally, or just with another person. That there are sometimes, very clearly, when you think about it, some ideal feelings that would be far better than what people might be feeling now. So how do you get from what you are feeling to what would be ideal to feel? We explore what would be ideal, and then we talk about strategies. We're understanding how emotions work. I help you a little bit with that. But I also then talk to you about, maybe you've been in a circumstance where you felt a certain way, similar to how you're feeling now. Totally different situation, but the feelings were similar. And you needed to feel the way you're hoping to feel, that you want to feel, that you think is ideal to feel. And it's similar to something that happened in your lifetime, maybe some time ago. Maybe it's very recently, and maybe a long time ago. But if we've got some history, then first of all, it's like a light bulb goes off in people's heads when they realize, holy cow, I've actually dealt with this similar kind of feeling in the past and turned it around in a good way. And maybe there's something to learn from that. So I'll ask that. And if there is, great. Because now we have you knowing that you don't have to feel helpless. You've actually been in a somewhat similar feeling state and moved to the feeling state you want in the past. So it's possible. We know it's possible because you did it. And since you did it, maybe there's something we can learn from the way you did it. So that's partly what we do. And then we explore, well, what can we learn and how can we enhance and build on that based on this particular situation? And we explore a number of options. And finally, at the end, I ask you, okay, if we got a strategy, an emotional strategy that feels right to you, and by right, I mean it's something you're absolutely willing to do. Curiously, even if I could tell you a strategy that would work for you, you may not be willing to do it. Like somebody, for instance, calls up and they're very stressed, and I suggest meditation. And they hate the idea because they've tried meditating before and it never worked for them. And now we're arguing about meditation. Not a useful response. So it's important that you're willing to do something that we both believe is going to be helpful. So willing is first. And then, are you really capable of this? Do you have the time, the energy, the money, the competency? And if everything is in play, that you say, yes, 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 I can do this, I'm capable of this, and I want to do this, I'm excited to do this, then you have an emotion-based plan that has a fairly good opportunity to be successful. That's how it works. So if you've got something going on in your life and you want to call, I'm on the air from 12 noon, the first and second Wednesdays of the month, to 12:50. So I've got about 30 minutes left. So 203-336-9756. That's the phone number. If you call me here, I'm able to work with you on the air. This will be on the air, so you know it's on the air. And then in working with you, I want you to understand that I'm going to be helping you and explaining as I go along so that everybody who's listening is learning how to use this emotion roadmap. That's the goal for the show. It's to help individuals. I love helping people, and to help lots of people who are listeners understand what I'm talking about, how I'm doing it, and how I'm helping you. And by the way, it's not unusual for people to call in with problems that other people have faced too. So sometimes somebody who's dealing with the same thing you are is going to get some help simply by listening to you. So again, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll encourage you to call now, because if you've got something you'd like to talk to me about, it's best to call when I've got plenty of time. I don't feel like I'm running up against the clock. There's a hard stop at 12:55. It's automated. I don't control it. The radio station is committed to providing public service announcements, underwriting announcements that happen right at 12:55, 5 minutes to the hour. So I have to stop right before then. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hey, Chuck. Good show. Dwayne from Brookfield. We've spoken before.
Thank you, Dwayne. I remember talking with you. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but I do remember talking with you.
Oh, a whole bunch of different things. Remember, I gave you some ideas about your profession. You had all the resources at the station.
Yes, I think so. I think I do. Yeah.
Anyway, I was just thinking, I think the whole country has changed. I mean, remember back in the 70s, if you didn't like your job or you had a problem with your boss, you just say, screw it, I can go down the road and get 10 jobs a day. And we don't make anything anymore. If you're being laid off, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I retire, and I wish I could give some real constructive advice. But, you're talking about middle management, maybe your 40s, 50s. It's hard to just say, oh, I'm going to go out and program. There was just so much more opportunity back in the 60s, 70s. You could learn any trade you wanted, and now you don't even see any young people out there trying to learn roofing or electrician or whatever, any construction. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Well, first of all,
it's just a whole new time in America. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that you may not like the president. A lot of people listen to the station. I know don't, but obviously there's an attempt to try and turn that around. Maybe he'll be successful. I don't know, but
I think he will. But it's going to take 4 years. It's going to take 6 more Trumps to turn this thing around. Get it back with the manufacturing and opportunities. I
Yeah,
mean, you don't even see
manufacturing.
people
Yeah.
anymore mowing their own lawns. They're hiring people out mowing their lawns, and I'm saying, yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? There's just so much opportunity, it seems like, in our youth.
Well,
Uh,
I don't. Here's where I differ for a bit with you, Dwayne. Is
Go
when I
ahead.
listen to Governor Lamont talk about there's hundreds, thousands of jobs out there, high paying jobs.
Yeah.
It's that people. Where I do agree with you is that I don't think people are looking and saying, well, I want to target what I do based on how much income I want to bring in, and so I'm willing to
Hmm.
explore and see if there's other things that I might like. Because I think a lot of people have been raised with the idea, follow your passion, follow your dream, and well,
Yeah.
this isn't necessarily your dream to go become a welder,
I know. I know it.
or an electrician. But what you might find is that you really enjoy the interaction. We just had an electrician at our house the other day. What a nice fella came over the house. His name's Colby, and he just we had something with a fan that wasn't working, a heat fan in the
Yeah.
bathroom, and he spent 45 minutes with us, and he just came over to look at it to see what he needed to do, and he basically with him looking at it and doing a few things that changed a couple things, it worked. I didn't have to fix it. And then as he was leaving the house, I said, I got to pay you something. I know it wasn't a scheduled visit. He said, give me just a few dollars. And I didn't have anything in my pocket. And I said, I said, can I go up and get it? And he said, no, forget it. Just say something nice about me. So I'm saying something about Colby. If you
Yeah,
need an
good.
electrician,
Good karma.
if you need an electrician in the Simsbury area, give me a call. I'll write something nice about him. But I mean, here's a guy who just pleasant as could be, really made a difference for us. We didn't know what we were getting into, but it was just, I'm trying to encourage people by the story just to think outside the box. I know that's a metaphor that's overused.
I think there's a lot of missed opportunity with the youth, though. I mean, like you just said, call an electrician or a plumber. What are you paying? I mean, these guys are making a really nice living.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big problems, I can't speak for anywhere else, but in the state of Connecticut, when they did away with all the shops in high school. I mean, here in Brookfield, we had electrical shop, you had woodworking, you had drafting. You could work with your hands and see, hey, I might want to pursue something like this. And I don't know why they ever discontinued it. I mean, it was such a worthwhile thing to have in the school system because not everybody wants to or can go to college. There's plenty of other opportunities other than college.
Well,
right?
Vocational school and training and apprenticeship and those things are things that people don't talk about, and they don't feel like they're sexy, I guess. And yet to me, it's like, boy, wouldn't you like to just know that you're dependent on? I mean, I've been independent since 1994. And for the number of years I worked inside companies, I learned a lot. I was glad to be there, and I enjoyed a lot of the time I was there. But I also felt like what happens to me and my family, because I was the main earner at the time, was like not in my control.
Right.
It's like it's this corporate entities that sit up on high, because I work for big companies. They make decisions that are independent of the people underneath them often. And just if they're looking a lot at financial numbers. I mean, I love capitalism, but I hate greed. And so much of the things that we get upset about is when people become too greedy and they stop thinking about the people below them and how things are gonna be impactful.
I just hope a lot of this manufacturing does come back to the country. I think it'll open up a lot more opportunities for the young people. And if I was, thank God, I've been retired 15 years and I've always worked. I've never had any downtime.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to be in my 40s or 50s right now and said, we don't need you anymore, honest to God, I don't know what I'd do.
Well, that's one of the things I'm trying to encourage people to be more confident in what they can do. I remember because I had that experience with I was working for an insurance company, and this is a story about greed, and I'll tell it, I guess. So there was an executive vice president at the company where I worked who got promoted there was a holding company that owned the insurance company I was with. There were lots of companies this holding company owned. I don't want to say names, but just the idea of it was that this fellow went in and he realized that of all the companies that were being held by this overseer, if you will, that the company he came from had a much higher ratio of human resource professionals to overall team members or staff members. And he came in and he said, hey, given the lower ratios in these other companies, I don't think we need a whole bunch of people. And this was a year of record-breaking profits in the company that I was with. And because he was going to get a bigger bonus because he was going to save some money overall, and it was all driven by numbers, a whole bunch of people, not because of performance, but just because of levels and numbers, they just got taken out. Gone.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that happens in corporate life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not much is thought about to the fact that who would have thought we're going to be losing jobs in a year when we're having record-breaking profits?
Right.
Nobody. Right. So that's why I was trying to encourage people in the beginning of the conversation. I think you always got to be prepared. And fortunately for me, I'd worked other places. I wasn't afraid of it, and it turned out to be a good thing. And I've been on my own for so many years. It's been a blessing, actually, because the way it worked out for me. But I think for a lot of people, you get terrified and you panic, and then you get frozen in place. And
I could see that happening.
So you gotta.
Isn't it refreshing? You got Musk and his team in there shining a light on all this waste, and you don't hear anybody saying, "Wow, I didn't realize that. This guy is smart. Look what he found. This is our tax money. You're paying for this."
Well, you're not the typical WPKN listener, Dwayne. I can tell you that. But
God, I've been a listener since 1969, actually, or 70.
Yeah, I know, and I love the station too. But there's a lot of people that listen and are very upset with what Elon Musk is doing. I try to balance the way I look at this stuff, and
you have to.
And to me, it's like everybody. From all the presidents, Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Biden talked about it, Obama talked about it, Clinton did it. Clinton, by the way, laid off like 33,000, I guess, or something workers, but he did it in a bipartisan way because he and Ian Gingrich were working together on that stuff. Yeah. So I think there was a really interesting conversation I heard the other day. This guy named Tony Robbins, I'm really a fan of. He's a guy who studied the best communicators in the world, made a living from helping people understand what the best people who communicate effectively do, and he learned a lot of stuff that he's become very famous with. And I actually think he's a really smart guy, and I've listened to him and learned a lot from him. But one of the things that he said was, sometimes it's really interesting. He said, he was talking to a friend one day, and he said, "Hey, I noticed that in your home you have a lot of brown here," and he said. He said, "It looks like you really like the color brown. You decorate." And he said, "Let's look around and see what you got." And then he said, "Close your eyes." And he said, "Okay." He closed his eyes, and he said, "Okay, can you tell me what you saw that was brown? What do you remember?" And so we told him a number of things, a lot of things. And then he said, "You also had a lot of red in the room." He said, "Can you tell me what's red?" And he couldn't remember anything that was red. Even though he just spent time looking around the room knowing he was going to be asked to remember something. And what Tony said to him is, "Hey, we kind of focus on what we want to focus on, and we miss a lot of the other things." And I think when people look at what's happening in politics, it's like, you got this tunnel vision, if you will, on either side, and you only see one side. So years ago, this is another thing that I think's changed. Years ago, I used to be able to talk with somebody who saw things differently, and it was like, hey, maybe I got something to learn from him,
No, you can't now.
No, to me, it's
But I'm just overjoyed that they're finding all this money just being squandered. I mean, they should be on Channel 2 News 24/7. Look what they just found, another $400 billion going here, 350. Nobody's talking about it, and it's your money they're taking.
Yeah, the concern.
I think they should. I think people should be overjoyed that they're finally shining a light on all this fraud. All the buildings nobody's using, they're paying millions of dollars in rent. There's 10 people in there.
Well, not only are they not talking about it, the thing that scares me is all the people doing violence against like the Tesla dealerships. I don't understand that at all.
5 months ago, Tesla was everybody's darling. You got to get a Tesla. Now they're spray painting them, blowing them up, shooting into them.
I don't understand what's wrong with people doing something like that. It's horrible. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm glad I'm retired and I'm just out of the frying pan. I'm just watching it burn.
Well, I think thanks for the call, Joanne. I think you're right about, I hope people listening just start looking at other opportunities beside the thing that was your passion, your dream, whatever. I mean, if you can live your dream, great. But you also want to, you might find that the things that you were dreaming about, again, it was where you were trying to focus. Somebody focused you or you focused yourself. And there's lots of stuff out there that maybe you haven't looked at. You don't know that there's a lot of red in the room too or something, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Just the idea of just look outside and start thinking about what else can you do that might excite you that you hadn't really considered before. So.
All right, I'll let you go. You probably have 10 people wanting to comment. I'll see you later.
Thanks a lot for the call. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Anyway, that was Dwayne. Thank you for the phone call, Dwayne. Again, if you got something that's going on that you're concerned about, that you're really interested in, that you really want to talk to me about in terms of thinking differently about how you might deal with a circumstance that's in front of you that you're challenged by, give me a call, 203-336-9756. I did notice somebody was trying to call when Dwayne was there. So if you can call back, the phones are free at the moment. 203-336-9756. Okay, so a couple other things I thought I'd talk about to you today is how do you frame things so that people feel like you care about them? Now, what does that even mean? Let me give you an example. I just submitted an article for publication on engagement. A lot of people in the workplace think that engagement is kind of key to what gets done in any company, factory, service business, hospitality industry. If people are highly engaged, interested, curious, excited, feel good about what they're doing, feel like they have a purpose behind what they're doing, and they feel valued and proud and appreciated and respected in that workplace, you have highly engaged people. Now, the people that have tested for engagement over the years is a company called Gallup. Anybody that's in mid-sized to large companies probably know something about Gallup. It's an organization that has tested for engagement for a number of years. And what they find somewhat consistently over the years, irrespective of who's president, what's going on in the world, whether there's a war or it's peacetime, consistently they find that there's only about 60% of people in the workplace that are engaged slightly, moderately. There's about 20% that are highly engaged. And sometimes as much as 20% that are actively disengaged, very unhappy with their company, not doing anything beyond what they absolutely have to do, and sometimes even trying to sabotage the company because they're so upset with perhaps what's happened to them or something that's happened to friends of theirs with the company. And there's reasons for that. I mean, there's sexual harassment reasons. There's bullying that takes place in companies that might cause people to be, actively disengaged. Lots of things happen. But what if you had everybody engaged? How good could you be? And I think of engagement as a feeling, as an emotion, as an emotional problem to be solved. How do we create more engagement? Well, there's lots of to talk about around engagement, and over the time I've talked about different things in the work that I do. But here's one pretty good example, I think. It's part of what I submitted in the article I wrote. Let's assume that you have a supervisor who has maybe 10 people working for him or her. And all those 10 people, one of the things that most people really care about in the workplace, and this is based on lots of literature, not just my opinion, is they feel like it's important that their supervisors support them, that they have their back, that they can trust them, that they can go to them when they're uncertain about, the next step in the process, or, they something isn't working quite right and they have an idea, but they don't want to do it without talking to the supervisor. They feel like they need the person who is the leader of their particular group to be supportive of them. So let's assume that this supervisor, very talented person, gets called away and is asked to be part of a project team, and they'll still be the actual, in name anyway, supervisor of the unit, but they won't really be very available. And so the level of support they can provide now is going to be minimal to the 10 people that report to them, because they're going to be busy doing something else that's important for the company or organization they're part of. Now, one of the things that you want to think about is, what do you do then? How do you make sure the people that need you continue to feel supported? Well, let's say you get somebody that's really good. One of the people that works directly for you is really good, and that they understand the processes. They're really good problem solvers. They have good relationship skills. And you say to them, well, maybe the person's name is Ahmed. Ahmed, I have to be pulled off to this project. I'm going to be pulled aside here. And I just want you to understand, I'm not going to be available to you and to the others. So I know you're really good at this stuff, and I know you're really busy, but I need you to take on some responsibility here. I'm gonna tell people to come to you and take over for me when I'm not there. I just want you to be the person that supports them, and I appreciate it. Thanks. And just leaves. Now Ahmed's getting no more money for this. He's not getting any particular recognition other than his peers who might not necessarily see this as a positive from their vantage point. Why didn't he pick me? I mean, different things could be happening. But anyway, so Mama does it. But maybe feels a tiny bit resentful that, why do I have to pick up this extra stuff? I'm already doing a lot of work, and now you're asking me to do this other stuff. What if you framed it differently? And this is what I want to make. I want to make the point about what it means to be emotionally intelligent in this circumstance. What if you said, Ahmed, I'm very proud of the work that this. Let's assume this is a brand new conversation. You never had the other one. You say, Ahmed, I'm very proud of the achievements that you've been making and the level of growth that you've shown. It's been really impressive. I'm going to be moving off to a project in the next several months, it looks like, and I'm not going to be very available. I mean, there are moments I can come back and still be available to the people I supervise, but a lot of time I'm going to be unavailable. And I think you've risen to a level where I'd be very comfortable, if this is acceptable, I'd be very comfortable telling people that I'm depending on you to provide the kind of support that I've provided in the past. I'm going to tell people that I trust you implicitly and that I want them to trust you as well. I want them to see you as someone they can come to for whatever it is that they're thinking that they need to talk to me about. Because that's how much I believe in you. How do you feel about that? Now, I assume most people are going to feel quite different and far more pleasant and pleased if it's given, if the assignment is given this way and framed this way. That's my point about how you frame things. Now, it's not always what you think is the right thing to say, because it's really funny because hopefully everybody gets that, by the way, that, you know, if I frame it in a way that says, I'm really proud of you, I've seen what you've learned and how you've grown, and I'd like to put you in a position with a little more responsibility. I'm not giving you any more money for this. We didn't talk about money, but I'm just saying this is a chance for you to show some leadership. I could say that too, add that to it. So anyway, my point is, there are times when we say things that make people feel a certain way. And I think when you're asking somebody to take on a big load, especially, you really want to be thoughtful about what's the emotionally intelligent way to say something. But I think it's really useful to think, what's the emotionally intelligent way to say anything? When you're mad at somebody, how do you speak to them in a way that doesn't escalate it? When you want to encourage somebody to do the right thing, they've got a decision to make. They're going to do whatever they want to do. You don't control them, but you'd like them to do what you think makes the most sense. How do you say it in a way that gets them motivated to do what you think is right? And being thoughtful about that is partly what this show is about. I was reading something on LinkedIn. It's a business social app, a business app, I guess. Anyway, it's a lot of people know about LinkedIn, but in case you don't, it's a place where a lot of people write commentary about their businesses, about ideas they have about leadership, about teamwork, about new product development, and people comment on the posts that are made. And sometimes people create business opportunities by networking using LinkedIn as a vehicle. So anyway, I like reading it. It's always interesting to me. And this morning I was reading it, and it actually took this concept of saying things and framing things in a way that they said was emotionally intelligent and demonstrated leadership. And they were doing they provided some examples similar to the one I just shared with you. But they also had an example that I really intensely dislike. Have you ever had somebody, when you're standing waiting for something to happen and it's taking a really long time, say to you, "Thank you for your patience"? I'm not always a patient person. I know that about myself. And I think to myself, whenever anybody says that, what makes you think I'm patient? So I just think one of the ways that you might say that really is emotionally intelligent and doesn't suggest that I have patience and you're thanking me for it when I've never indicated that. That's fine. I'm not in a hurry, and you take your time, get it right. If I've said that to you, that's fine. Thank you for your patience makes sense. But if you just assume I'm being patient when you're doing something that isn't working, I think that's a big assumption to make, and you shouldn't make it. What you might say is, I'm so sorry this is taking this long. At which point I become more patient. Anyway, my point is that how you frame things really matters. So that was just a concept I wanted to share this morning. I thought was important. Okay. Dwayne raised something that was consequential. He talked about politics, about Elon Musk, what he's doing. He's really pleased with a bunch of the stuff that Elon is doing. I got to say that I'm not extremely happy with some of the ways some of the things have happened, but I do like the idea that we're going after waste and actually doing something about it. That seems right to me. But I also know a lot of people are extremely upset. That's why the crazy actions against Tesla are happening. So I know it's really hard to talk about politics these days with people. And I thought, because I work in the world of emotional intelligence, that I could get this right. That I could be thoughtful. And if I disagreed with someone, I could say it in a way that wasn't disagreeable. But I find people are so stressed about what's happening. And partly it's the messaging. I don't know, as an example, if veterans' health is being impacted by the cuts we're seeing. I hear people tell me that veterans' health is being impacted by the cuts they're seeing. I haven't heard a veteran say that their health has been impacted by the cuts we're seeing. And I've heard, on the conservative side, people say, we're not touching anything that has to do with veterans' actual health benefits. One of the things we're doing, as an example, is we have 50 different chief information officers doing different things inside the veterans services, veterans hospitals and so forth. And we don't need 50 chief information officers. We need maybe a few, but maybe even one with people working underneath them. We don't need 50 different system chiefs. So, I've been in organizations to know that that's a great idea, is to consolidate systems and actually have somebody run them instead of lots of people running them where they're not working together well inside your organizations. Because who's authority? Who's responsible? You don't know when there's systems that have to be integrated and they're coming from different places with different ownership by different leaders. I think that's a great idea. That's going to make getting your benefits easier if the systems work better. So I see that and I think, well, that sounds like a good idea. But then I hear from people who are so panicked because a lot of what they read and a lot of what I read says that these things are horrible in terms of what's happening. I have a lot of people in healthcare who feel like some of the things that are being cut, some make sense, but a lot of them don't. So that's a concern. And honestly, most of us, we don't have real facts or information. We're influenced by what we're, the stations we watch, the periodicals we read, the newspapers, the podcasts we listen to, the influences we trust. There's a lot of ways we're influenced. And so we believe what these people say, and then we go out and we get upset or we get happy and then we argue with each other without really knowing. So one of the things I'm trying to do is be smarter about how I deal with this. And I'm actually taking something which is Braver Angels. And for those of you regular listeners have heard me talk about Braver Angels, and they're about civility. They're not about changing people's minds, but they're about helping people to listen to each other when they don't agree. And I always thought I was really good at this, and I think I am actually most of the time. But there are times when I'm not. So I'm actually going to go to one of their workshops this coming Saturday. I signed up for it. It's 3 hours long. It's a long time to give up on a weekend. But I'd like to know what these people who have been dealing with this for years now, what are some of the best practices? And I'll share them with you when I'm back on the air next week. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just encourage you, just really be thoughtful about how you frame what you say to people. It makes a big difference, whether it's to your daughter, your husband, your partner, in the workplace, to a team member, to a peer, to a boss, whoever it is you're addressing. If it's something that's a bit controversial or it's an ask of some kind, think about how you frame it. It's helpful to think about it. I always think, if I spend a few moments, if I am going to have a conversation with somebody, it's an important one. If I spend a few moments thinking about how do I want this conversation to go? First of all, how is it likely to go if I don't think about that? And then how do I want it to go? And I always think that maybe there's an opening, there's a beginning, there's a setting the tone. Then there's the moment where I ask or I confront or I do whatever I need to do that's going to create some tension. And that requires a more heightened focus. And finally, at the end, I want to have a conversation that at the end, I feel good, I feel respected, I feel appreciated, I feel heard, I feel valued, and so does the other person. Both of us, or several of us, if there's more than just you and another person, we're all walking away feeling like that was a really good conversation. We all got heard, we all felt respected, we all were respectful to one another. And while we didn't necessarily change what we thought or believed, we at least understood each other's perspectives in a way that we didn't before. And maybe that's as good as it gets for the time being on some of these things. Anyway, the number to call is 203-336-9756. I've got about 5 minutes left if you want to call. Anything you'd like to say, 203-336-9756. Well, I will tell you a little bit about the rest of the article what I was writing about was one of the things that I'm doing, which is really interesting, is working with a company in the Midwest where I have a friend who's developed an app called the Emotional Culture Index. And the app allows you to take 10 emotions. They have standard ones that you can pick, 5 pleasant, 5 unpleasant. And you can rate them on 3 different ways. What is actually happening today that you experience right now? How would you rate this emotion? Like respect or anxious or something like appreciated or valued or productive, different things. And then you rate what you're actually feeling on a 1 to 5 scale. And then you rate what would be ideal to feel. Absolutely ideal to feel. So 5 on the pleasant ones. So, you might think like anxious. You never want to feel anxious, but anxious, if you really think about anxious, you do want to feel anxious. In other words, you want to feel enough anxiety sometimes to make sure you get done what you need to get done, that you have the conversation that you have to have, that you fill out the form that has to go in by the end of the day or the end of the week. So anxious actually can be a useful emotion, but not at a high level. I don't think you ever want to be too anxious. Now, I shouldn't say never on certain unpleasant feelings, because sometimes fear that leads to terror at the highest level of fear might give you the strength you need to escape a really horrible situation you find yourself in. That's worst case basis, though. So I don't think that's the thing you want normally. Anyway, so the idea is you can rate yourself on how you actually feel right now, what would be ideal to feel, and what's realistic to feel. They have 3 different measures. And you can look at that and you can break it up so that, let's say you have your office staff and you need at least 3 people, so it's anonymous to fill it out. But let's say you have 10 office people and they fill it out. And then you have 10 factory workers and 10 warehouse employees and 10 people in catering and 10 people in room service or front desk management. And anyway, you get all these different groupings that you can ask, how are you feeling? What would be ideal to feel? What was realistic to feel? And see what people come up with. And then you ask, there's a commentary section where you allow people to talk about, what causes them to feel the way they are. So you get a deeper dive, if you will, than just a number that tells you a little bit about what people are feeling and why. And so I've been using that. And one of the things that we did, I thought was exciting, was we actually work with the management team, because you can customize this tool to create the emotions they thought were worth measuring instead of the emotions they had. And, we set some guidelines like, why do we need 5 unpleasant? If you want to feel respected, as an example, and you don't, doesn't that tell you what's negative? I don't think you need 5 negatives. So we ended up with 8 positives or 8 pleasant, 2 unpleasant emotions. And we kind of captured what people thought was important. A couple of things that showed up that was really important to us one was pride. I didn't pick pride. I didn't see that as a key one to feel, but a lot of people said pride's really important to feel in the work that you do. Another one that I learned from one of the people on the floor was, and we don't think of this as an emotion often, but accountability. I feel accountable. Accountability drives success in the workplace, in my opinion. It's one of the most important emotions to feel, for people to feel accountable. But so is engaged. And so as I wrote this article, I talked about how we're looking to get everybody to be more engaged by thinking about how each person feels and how they treat each other and how they are treated internally to the organization, also how they treat any customer or any vendor and people in the community. Because you are, as a representative of this company, you create and impact people's feelings everywhere you go and anything you do. And so it increases the level of responsibility and accountability, but also, hopefully, it comes back to you. The more you're more thoughtful emotionally about how you're dealing with people, the better you are. That's it for me, folks. Hope you enjoy the show. See you next week. Bye-bye.
For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government
come together.